Hi, Real Writers. There was a question a little bit ago, and I will show it up here. And the bottom half of that was I want to write sci-fi. I'm interested in writing sci-fi. And I've left it alone because I'm not a big sci-fi writer, so I decided to go off and do some research and find out what really makes sci-fi sci-fi. I've had Love, Money, Bombs, which is a dystopian sort of alternate reality future, which is a bit like V for Vendetta, and The Valley, which was a dystopian post-apocalyptic future, but I've never really written a sci-fi. So it took me a little bit of reading around and digging and reading a few sci-fi scripts to come up with the key elements that really make up a good sci-fi. I'm going to whack on the new glasses because I've got my notes over here, but let's get started. Okay, there's two sorts of sci-fi. We're going to look at the real hard sci-fi to start with, and then we'll probably discuss sci-fi as a setting. The real hard-edge sci-fi is scientifically accurate, as we say. The science in it has to be credible, has to maintain logic, has to have a reason, and it has to follow what we understand as the laws of physics and the laws of certain scientific fundamentals that we understand. It has to be accurate within that. And there has to be technical detail in the story, and the science should sort of be at the heart of the story. Stories are always about people, but it should be people and the technology. It should be a realistic setting as well. Hard-edge sci-fi is the future. It tends to be in the future, and it has to be around a science that we're following into the future. So a realistic setting, and this is going to come into your world building. So when you build the world, it has to sort of be realistic. It has to have logic behind it. This is hard-edge sci-fi, but the science is there, so it has to be realistic. It should have a human and sociological impact. So the technology could be time travel. How's that impacting on people? There was one with James Franco. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a Netflix series, I think. He was going back in time to try to stop the Kennedy assassination. He kept seeing the implications of it going forward and backwards. That was about the Kennedy assassination, but it was set realistically. Sorry, it was set realistically, and it had human and social implications. Science fiction, not hard science fiction, but getting more towards the hard science fiction.
Am I making any sense at all?
There should be exploration in it, and some of the science should be around the solving of a scientific problem, the search for this, the hunt for that, the discovery of this. So it should be problem solving, and it should be speculative and plausible. It should pose a question. Hard science fiction tends to do this, poses a question of, well, what if this happens in the future? What if we get time travel? What about if we come up with a customizable vaccine for people? So do we then allow people who can't afford it? Do we want to maximize the corporations? Does socialist countries that hand out these sorts of vaccines get hold of this technology, and now suddenly they're letting their masses get better, but the richer countries are having a rich wealth class and a poor, so it begins to bring in this world building, the moral speculation, the science around the vaccines. That's more of a hard-edged, or what they tend to say, hard science fiction, where the science and the technology drives the story, but stories are always about people. Now, if we go the other way, which would probably be the thing that I would write, would be where science fiction is a setting, a bit like the Old West. You could set any story in the Old West, America's Old West. So science fiction then becomes part of it. Immortal Engines is a bit like that. Big cities walking around on that fails that. Why would you do that? The energy to hold a city off the ground and put it on feet and walk. And we now know in our society that energy and the production of energy is one of the major issues that keeps a society alive. It keeps a civilization going. The ability to have enough energy, to produce enough food, to have enough facilities, to run the medicines, the factories, the hospitals, food production, supply chains. It's a massive consumption of energy. So why would you waste all the energy just having a city on feet so it could walk around and then have these cities walk up and fight each other? None of that makes sense. So that's not hard science fiction, but that's where science fiction is a setting. Alien, science fiction, set in space. It works well, but it's not about the science. That is a monster movie. It's a horror film set in outer space. The alien monster could nearly be Michael Myers out of what was it, Halloween? Yeah, Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis. I remember watching that when I was a kid. I was petrified. But it was like Halloween. No matter what you do to kill the monster, it just keeps sitting up in the background and keeps coming after you. So that's where science fiction isn't hard science fiction. In that sort of science fiction, you've got the world building again, you've got moral and ethical dilemmas. You'll pose probably like a normal story. You'll pose a thesis, a theme. You'll explore that theme. So maybe there's this machine killing people or whatever it happens to be. Would you be willing to sacrifice yourself for a loved one? How far would you go? When will you stop caring for society and start caring for yourself? These are things, the standard themes that are inside stories that you can then set inside science fiction. But you've got hard science fiction where the science is the story, and then you've got science fiction set stories. Star Wars is science fiction, but science doesn't play a big part. The Force plays a bigger part, and the Force is maybe a proxy for religion, maybe a proxy for telepathic abilities. It's the thing that holds us all together. They tried to make it sort of sciencey, the midichlorians, which everyone seems to sort of lose their nut over. So that's science fiction, but not hard science fiction. We just have technology. We have a big, unbeatable threat that can take out a planet at a time, just cruises along and kills everything before it. So it's like the shark in Jaws. You can't stop it, but you've got that one slither of hope. So that's very much a standard hero adventure story set in science. Hope that answers that question. For the person who asked it, I really should have read their name and remembered it, but I didn't, and I'll put it back up there. Thank you for that, and that's the answer to science fiction. Thank you for everyone who's been doing that. That's remarkable. You can find me on the socials. I tend to frequent like Reddit and Write One Act, which is on School. I'll put a link down below. Not on Stage 32 anymore. They decided to start doing courses on how writers can use AI, and that was the death of them for me. AI is not a way of teaching writers, so I'm not over there anymore. I'm starting a new little company, so Griffiths Creative will be disappearing, and it's going to be a little production company. I'm rolling everything into that little production company. You can get the T-shirts, the books, 20% off for all you guys. writerduet. I get nothing out of this, and it's just for you. And until next time, keep writing. Bye.